Hi guys, welcome to week 3 of Media Law Case Studies. I'm Dr. Jessica Freeman. I wanted to do a video this week just to get a little bit of FaceTime with you guys as we are going into week 3. I will tell you the first 2 weeks have been a little bit unusual for me for an online course, just in that I have been doing some professional and personal traveling that has made it difficult to do videos. However, I have been keeping in touch with you guys via email and encourage you to keep sending me stuff if you have questions or comments about the class. Hopefully everything's been in order up to this point. But I wanted to do a video to cover a few key points of the first couple of weeks. I won't do a video every week of the semester just because I think that for this particular class, text interaction sometimes will fit a little better as the platform of communication when talking about different cases. But I wanted a little bit of FaceTime. I also wanted to let you guys know that I am posting along with this video a video to me. I realized as I came back this last week that I had not done a proper introduction to who I am, and I was fortunate that about a month ago Media Relations for SDSU did a nice little video about me. So I am linking to that in this news post so that you can find out a little bit about me, and also linking to my professional profile. Okay, so you'll have that introduction to me, and please excuse the tardiness on my part. As we move forward, I will tell you I will aim to be a lot more interactive than I have been in the first 2 weeks, chiming in a little bit more on the discussion board and such. As you might note, though, in the syllabus, that I do evaluations twice of your discussion posts as far as grades go. The first one is coming up after week 3, and it evaluates those first 3 discussion posts that you did. What I will do, given kind of my sparse interaction these first few weeks and knowing that I haven't been quite on my game, I will be looking through those discussion posts, but reading them, but I will basically be grading for those first 2, the ones that you've already done, that you basically just did them on time, and they included just some thoughtful feedback about the cases that you were supposed to evaluate. So just realize that those first 2 I will essentially go a little bit easy on, given that it's been a little bit unusual from my end. The week 3, moving forward, I will look at a little bit more critically. Okay, so keep that in mind as you are completing the discussion posts. Also, just housekeeping wise, keep in mind that your first case study report is due on Sunday, June 18th. And there are examples on D2L in content for you to look at how those should be formatted, what they should look like. And you guys should have signed up, 8 of you at least, for specific cases. Others of you will be mining for cases out of the text. If you have questions about that, please feel free to email me sooner than later, hopefully, so I can get back to you in a timely manner. There's good instruction, though, up on content about the formatting requirements and such, so please do look at those as you are putting together your case study. So these first couple of weeks were largely just about getting you guys familiar with number 1, in chapter 1, the rule of law, basically kind of reviewing how the court system works. One of the most interesting things to me to review was just kind of how the Supreme Court actually works and takes its votes versus discussion. One of the interesting points that I pointed out to my colleagues the other day was that discussion starts from most senior court members, then moves down to junior most court members, but when they take a vote it goes the other way around. I just thought that was an interesting point. And chapter 1 also kind of reviewed really key concepts in media law, such as judicial review, specifically in the context of Marbury versus Madison, and then also looked at the Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission case from 2010, which I noted, you guys read it, but my biggest notes were that it was a really interesting decision to read because number one, of how it changed how campaign finance works in the United States, but also because of how controversial the decision was. When you actually read the court decision in the text, it was interesting to see how, in some cases, almost scathing the wording was on each side. And then also it applied that concept of stare decisis, just this idea that lower courts should typically abide by higher courts' decision as precedents, but in this particular case opted to depart from that. So I found it to be really interesting. Moving into chapter 2, we looked at the First Amendment, and it was a really nice review of speech that was protected versus speech that's sort of protected and speech that is basically unprotected. We tend to sometimes, just in common speak, assume that we live in a country where free speech is valued. But as you read in chapter 2, not all speech is protected speech. And so there are times when certain types of speech will not be protected and in some cases can be punished. And chapter 3 goes on to kind of elaborate on these particular points, these speech distinctions, things like fighting language, threats, and speech in educational contexts. So really interesting stuff. Some things that I noted interesting, that the Constitution, essentially, the court has ruled, protects flag burning as symbolic speech, but not burning a draft card, and applies that O'Brien test there. So some interesting stuff to kind of look at. And then also looking at the cases in Tinker and then Alonis, kind of what they established as far as different types of speech and what is not protected. What's really interesting about this particular chapter is that it, quoting the book, looks at the fringes of constitutional protection. And honestly, when you look at free speech, a lot of the tests of the limitations and the extensions of free speech apply cases where sometimes people say things that are not necessarily valued or agreed with by most people. And so sometimes it's some of the most egregious speech in some cases that is upheld as being constitutionally protected. Those are the tests that we kind of look at in the Supreme Court. So I found those particular chapters to be really useful. Along with those kinds of thoughts, I am posting a couple of articles just for your personal edification, no testing on it. But in this news section, I will be posting one article on President Trump's Muslim registry that he's proposed, and specifically how Politico consulted some constitutional scholars who said that this actually may be constitutionally okay if this is implemented. And I found that to be a really interesting article in light of some of the discussion in the chapters about how during war times, and specifically in the War on Terror, how sometimes the Constitution can feel at odds with free speech and free expression. And then along with that, kind of keeping in line with some articles about President Trump this week, I also am posting an article about how some people are proposing that President Trump may be indeed violating the First Amendment by blocking Twitter followers who disagree with him because of his role as the President of the United States, how that may be somehow prohibiting free speech and the First Amendment. So I'm posting both of those articles just because I think that they provide some really interesting, timely discussion about some of the issues that were raised in these chapters. Okay, so that's what I have for you this week. I look forward to working with you in the next 8 weeks as we progress through these media law case studies. I hope you're finding them to be interesting and useful discussions, and I look forward to reading your discussions and chiming in a little bit more regularly as we move forward. Thanks so much and have a wonderful week.